share my team race talk and share. Did you give her a ride?
What?
You give her a ride?
No. Oh, she's giving me a ride.
Nice. All right, we're officially live on YouTube, which is pretty neat, and it's a very delayed YouTube video, so that's awesome for us. You guys get to hear everything before anyone else hears it. All right, so I'm gonna kind of talk here, so sorry if it looks weird. All right, so welcome to S.M.A.R.T Sailing's Team Racing Talk. I'm Travis Carlisle, and the first thing you guys need to know about team racing is starts. The biggest thing about starts is there's not many rules. We kind of went over that with all the people that are actually in the classroom right now, but there's not many rules pre-start. So I kind of wanted to give everyone an opportunity to see what tactics and strategy in team racing looks like, rather than just talking about when two boats meet or at marks or at, somewhere on the course. So the whole point of this is just to give you guys an opportunity to understand more of the broad picture of team racing rather than just the basic rules of team racing. There's a lot of parts about team racing that we don't know, and strategies and tactics that are different than fleet racing, because in team racing, you guys are using the rules to your advantage. So the goal here is to make sure you guys can get that. So I do have the PowerPoint up, and I will be using this board over here to show you guys a lot of the pre-start stuff. So I'm going to start with this first slide for you guys, which is pre-start types of starts. So there's a couple different types of starts in team racing. You have the geographical start, and you have the man-on-man start. So the geographical start is boat, middle, and pin. So you have your boat side boat, you have your middle boat, and you have your pin boat. So generally, in most teams, you have the pin boat is your strongest team player, and then your middle boat can also potentially be your strongest, depending on what kind of coaching you have. But generally, your pin start is your strongest team player, and then you have your middle boat, and the boat start is kind of the easiest. Everyone knows how to boat start. Everyone's been boat starting since opties, right? So anyone can go ahead and do a boat start. It's the easiest way to get off the line in team racing, but that does make it crowded. Man-on-man is a much more difficult process in terms of starting, because you're bringing another team into it, and you have to be in on your boat handling and hope and pray that you have better or as good boat handling as the person that you are man-on-man on. So this can cause some issues. Some teams do use this, and it works successfully for them. Most teams that you see team racing, even at the highest level, are using the geographical start. It gives you the best opportunity to get off the line clean. If you have a strong man-on-man team, then it does work. But I will say majority of teams you'll see in sailing that do team racing are generally doing the geographical start. In terms of what you want to get done on these starts is you have multiple responsibilities as the pin boat, understanding where the ley line is. So you have pre-start homework. Your pre-start homework includes making sure you understand where the ley line to the pin is, which obviously changes in terms of what the wind's doing, what the current's doing. There's lots of factors in sailing, right? So the pin boat has to make sure that they're above this ley line on their final approach to the line. The boat starter is looking for their boat ley line, right? If you don't know your boat ley line, you don't know when to cut someone off. If you want to start boat and you have this second boat coming in to try and start right in here, right? So these are super important for kind of one huge reason. If you miss this ley line and you can't get to the pin, you're starting at a very big disadvantage in this team race. One of the biggest things that I say to all the teams that I coach is essentially, at worst, start even. All right? That is the biggest thing in terms of starting. If you start even with your team, with everybody, that's giving you a chance off the line, right? You can work on your boat speed, boat handling, tacks. You can give your team every opportunity to win this race. If your pin boat doesn't know what the pin lay line is and misses it, you are now at a big disadvantage. It is now 3 against 2. That number is not in your favor, right? So even if you may not have the best start, or your goal was to win the pin, or your goal was to win the boat, and you notice that you're missing the pin maybe down here, there's a lot of things you can do here, right? You can at least let your teammates know, if they're in this kind of setup, that you need a gap, right? So this boat can head boat 1 up and give your teammate a gap to at least get on the line, right? This is a team effort. You want to give everyone on your team an opportunity to get off the line and be going fast. So this is where communication comes into play. But if you don't know your boat or your pin lay lines, and you're out the back, you're already making your team do a lot of work right off the start, right? So keep in mind, whenever you're team racing, at worst, start even. It doesn't need to be, of course, left is favored, of course, right is favored. Those are things that I don't really care about as a coach. Just get off the line. It gives your team an opportunity, right? Time and distance is a huge thing on starts, right? So I think most of you that have had coaching have understood that time and distance is key in sailing. How fast am I going? How fast is it going to take me to get from, let's take all these boats away, from point A to point B, right? So in pre-start homework, one of the things that you're going to learn is, what is the time of this line, right? You can do that before you even go in sequence, right? A lot of you guys that are probably live streaming are probably have heard this talk from me a million times in terms of fleet race starts too. This is just as important, right? So if this line is 30 seconds, which it normally isn't in FJ team racing, in match racing or something like that, it could be that long, right? But then you know that's 30 seconds, and you have that same, and you are the pin boat. Let's say boat 1, you're pin. That's your job. You want to go start at the pin. If you are over here at, let's say, 45 seconds, are you going to make it to your spot on the line? Probably not, right? It's probably an extra, let's call it 15 seconds. You got 45 seconds to make it to that pin spot, right? If you don't understand that, then you're not going to get to your spot. You're not going to be able to do your job and what you're supposed to be doing. So understanding how long this line is and how long it's going to take you to get there, and this could change, right? So let's say this is at 10 knots. At 5 knots, this number is going to go up to maybe 50 seconds, right? At 20 knots, that number might drop down to 10 seconds, right? You're reaching. So that's going to really make your time go by a lot faster. All right, so understanding time and distance to line, whether you're having to sail upwind to it or reaching into it, right? Understand how long it's going to take to get to that point. All right, this is a cruise job if it's a 2-person's boat. If it's a match racing boat and you guys want to understand, and you guys have like a bow person, that person can do the job. Your pit person can do that job, right? But someone needs to be constantly letting the skipper know when you need to get to the line, when you need to pull the trigger to get to your spot on the line. All right, if there's no communication in the boat, you're probably going to have a bad start on the team race, right? Because if someone over here notices, say this broadneck boat comes in, notices that you're going to be late and that the rest of your team is over here, you got a single boat. The rest of their team is on the line. One of these guys is not like the other. Where's my pair? Eyes are on that boat, and he's going to do everything he can to make sure that you don't start well, right? Pre-start, for those of you guys that don't know pre-start rules in team racing, there are essentially no rules in team racing before go, okay? You have port starboard and windward leeward, and obviously avoid contact if possible. In team racing, sometimes there's just going to be contact because maybe there's no other way to get an umpire to make a call, but you want to avoid it at all costs, right? So you have those 2 rules that are in effect until go. And then, so this boat is going to make sure to make your life not fun, right? You're coming in on a reach. You can either go low, and he's probably going to put his bow down and make sure that you can't get here. And then if you decide you're going to swing your bow up to try and make this, he's going to luff you up, right? He's going to make your life very difficult. So not understanding your time and distance is huge. So pre-start homework is your biggest friend in any sort of racing that you want to do, especially team racing. I think too many people get their head into team racing as, okay, I need to try and, make sure that I do something, right? And pre-start, if you don't have to do anything and you can have a good start, that's awesome. All right. But if you are in a tricky situation on this pre-start, you got to make sure that you are asking for help from your teammates. We're going to get further into communication down these slides, but those are the big things on your starts. Man on man is a lot more difficult because they can kind of control you if they know you're a man on man team and put maybe your best bow at a disadvantage right off the start, right? Before I get to the next slide, I also want to talk about the sides of the course, right? So like I said before, there's not many rules in team racing. This is what we like to call the playground. The playground is a happy place, right? I always like working with my class, but obviously not many people in the class, a lot of people watching this on YouTube, but I always ask, why do you think that's called the playground? And it's because this is where you want to be playing in terms of team racing, right? You're on starboard entering the start. When I first started team racing, they used to have both teams one team come from the right side of the boat and one team come from the left side of the boat. And that got disbanded really quickly because guess what? Every single boat on the port is at a disadvantage coming into a start like that. So we call this the playground. This is where all the fun happens. This is where you're going to see, let's say this is an umpire boat. That's where your umpire boats are going to be set up. That's where they're hoping to see the action, right? If you happen to be on this side, all by your lonesome, this is not a fun place to be because you are coming in on port tack with no advantages. So if I'm the blue team here and I see this maroon team coming in on port tack, what am I going to do? I'm just going to sail right at him and make sure he doesn't start. You are controlling that pair, and it doesn't matter if you're 10 seconds late, 20 seconds late, 30 seconds late, 40 seconds late to the start. You are leading this pair back in, and you are now winning your pair, and you likely have the ace. The ace means that your team is in a position that their team has the 6. Having the 6 is very hard to win with. There's not many combinations where you can win with a 6, okay? So those are the two big things on time and distance and type of starts. Let's move on to the next slide for you guys. So in sequence. So you have current, wind speed, favored side. Those are the things that you guys are looking for, right? And that's going to result in the bottom 2 notes that I have there, which is pushing and leading. When are you going to push a boat? When are you going to lead a boat, right? So pushing, you want to push, which means I'm now going to continue being the blue boat. Blue boat is pushing, right? So blue boat is making sure that they're getting this guy, pushing them towards the line, right? Your goal is maybe to get him over early or maybe push him past that pin lay line, right? So he can't start well. And the times you're going to do that is in heavy wind, favorable current, and course left favored, right? Because if you can force this guy out past lay line, you now own the left, right? It is very hard to manage your speed when you're getting pushed, okay? If the person behind you is pushing you well, it is very, very difficult to be this boat, right? So what you'll see a lot at the college team racing level, at high level high school team racing, and at the national level, like the Hinman, is pre-start. I'm sure if some of you guys are watching this on TV, you're seeing these boats, this boat's going to go down, this boat's going to go down, this boat's going to go up, this boat's going to go up. They do these little snake maneuvers, right? This boat is going down to break an overlap or just get deeper in the box. And the reason why this guy wants to get deeper in the box is because if he continues to push this way, he's going to end up outside that pin lay line, right? So it's okay to go deep in the box, and as soon as that person gets even a bit of his bow overlap with you, this boat is now shooting up to break that overlap. So don't get hooked, right? Getting hooked is a bad thing because now you are the giveaway vessel. You're the giveaway boat. This person hooks you, they're going to shoot up and make sure that you can just stay head to wind, and this boat, their teammate, if they want to start pin, can just swoop around here, start pin, go left, right? Favorable current means the current pushing you this way, so current with a little C, pushing you up over the line, right? You would want to be pushing in that scenario as well, because if you can get that person to be called over early, now will be the maroon boat. If you can get boat one called over early because the current is pushing them over the line, you've now won your pair. They have to go clear themselves, and you guys are now in a really advantageous position to continue on with your race. Now, okay, I know how I'm pushing. Why am I leading? When am I leading? Light air, adverse current, and right favor is when you want to be leading into the start. These are because light wind is obviously going to be, okay, I need to be up on the line as soon as possible. It might be hard to get to the line. There's a lot of maneuvering going on. You want to be bow out off the line before your match or your person that's on you, right? So in this situation, you want to be this maroon colored boat, and you want to be making sure that you're doing a good job of, one, understanding your time and distance because you're leading into the line, understanding your pin lay line, you're the boat, understanding your boat lay line, right? And you're just kind of leading this person in, kind of baiting them, going up and down, and then hoping to be up on the line and then maybe be a little slow off the line. And now you're in that advantageous position coming off the line in that light air, right? And then the adverse current pushing you off the line is also going to make it tough to get off the line clean. So in those situations, you don't want to be the trailing boat, because if you mess up and you end up bow back, you are now not controlling your pair. The goal in team racing is take away everybody else. You should be controlling a pair. Doesn't matter who it is, control another team, another opponent, right? All right. On to some starting strategies. This is a lot to read, so don't read through all of it because it's going to be a lot. All right, so talk about course right favored, right? So there's different ways of going about a start if it is course right favored. Erase all this. We don't have all these random lines on the board here. All right, so course right favored. You want to be able to make sure that your starting position is more right of the course, right? So the way I would set it up if I'm the blue team is you want to all be doing what? Pushing, right? If every single one of the people on your team is pushing and you have a course right favored position, this gives every single person on your team the opportunity to tack out to get course right if you're paired up, right? There's not really anyone on your hip to make it so you can't tack out here. Boat 3 can be the first one to tack out, which is this guy here. He can be the first one to tack out. Boat 1, if they're smart, is probably going to follow them, right? So now every single one of your boats is set up towards that right side of the course, so pushing to the line. You can also set it up in a way which may seem weird, but kind of like this, right? Course right favored. If you can set it up anything looking like this or looking like this, you are in a good position if it's course right favored, right? So you have control, and then this person is out easy going to that course right side, right? So this is something that you can communicate. If you have a coach, talk about how you want to set this up, but really, really important to make sure that you give yourself and your team the opportunity to get to that course right side, right? else do I have in here? So in the, let's see, what else? Yeah, I went over all of that. So awesome. I know it's a lot of writing. That didn't take a whole lot of explaining. So let's go. What does it look like when your course left favored? So you can basically just invert that. You're going into a leading position, right? So let's invert this. That guy's winning the pin. This guy's leading his opponent in. And this guy's leading because you don't want to be the boat that's stuck on the side where you get to the top and you're headed coming into the mark, right? So this is an option. And again, this is another option, right? That's a lot of control on the left side. You can also even attempt, if you can make this happen, you can even attempt to do something like that. That way you're controlling the left side and you have a boat that can control the right if it's a shifty venue, right? So understanding course right favored versus course left favored and how you want to come in is super important in team racing. If you don't have a setup, if you just have a normal setup, it's also fine. If you have a normal setup, you're okay. It's fine, but it's not going to be ideal. You can be like this if you want to be. Sometimes it'll end up like this. But you have to have a plan afterwards, right? So understanding course left versus course right and how you want to set up on the line, very different, right? So course right favored, you want to be pushing. Course left favored, you want to be leading. Left, lead, right? Perfect. Before I get into the next slide, which I think is mostly communication stuff, do we have any questions on leading, pushing, starting strategies at all before I, yeah, thank you, Tyler. Tyler Mowry got us these boats. He's on the chat, so thanks, Tyler. But yes, no questions yet. All right, let's move on to communication. So, team racing's hard, okay? A lot of us grow up in opties, lasers, some of us do 420s, some of us are now getting into FJs, 29ers. These double-handed boats, these keel boats, they're all boats that you have to learn to work together in. But when you're fleet racing, it's just two of you, right? If you're fleet racing in keel boats, it could be up to 8 of you, depending on the size of the boat. 4 of you, right? Communication in the boat's important. But now in team racing, you bring a whole nother factor of communication to other boats on the water, right? And that becomes very, very difficult. So communication is, we call it caveman talk, which is on the next slide, but you need to have these buzzwords, call them buzzwords, right? So like I said, buzzwords shouldn't sound like each other. So there's a word that I heard a lot growing up in team racing, and that was no and go. Those don't work, right? If it's blowing 20 knots and your sails are flapping because you're ragging your jib on somebody because your teammate was slow off the line, and all of a sudden you're saying, go, 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 they may hear just the O part and they're thinking no. So you're going to mess up. That communication does not get across, right? So you want to use words that are vastly different than each other on the race course, and you want to keep them short and sweet. You're not going to be able to yell full sentences at people. You can't be screaming out to, let's call my teammate Doug. I can't go up to Doug in 20 knots of breeze when I'm course right and he's course middle and be like, Doug, sail all the way to lay line, then tack and rag on boat 6. He's going to get like maybe 10% of that conversation, right? He's going to be like, go to lay line. Maybe that's all he hears. Or maybe he hears go, right? There's too much going on from boat to boat to boat because you have your crew talking to your skipper in the boat in 3 different pairs of boats. The crew is looking around, looking for things to call, talking about plays. Where are we at? Do we need to go fast? Do we need to go slow? Are we in a good play? Are we in a bad play? Do we need to slow down? Do we need to speed up? That conversation is happening in every single boat on the course, ideally. And then you have to communicate with your teammates how that's working out, right? So if you end up fouling and you have to be spinning, just scream spinning. Like, people will hear that. Some people put their hands up and they're yelling spinning, and they go spinning, right? Don't like scream bloody murder and all of a sudden your teammate's like, oh, what is happening over there? And like 5 seconds later, you're already at Mark 2 and they're still doing their 720, right? That's not ideal. You could have condensed the race there. So short words, buzzwords are super important in team racing. On the start, they're important as well. We use a word called switch on the start line a lot. That's a really good one because if you do end up, let's say you're leading, right? And this happens, right? You're leading to the line, you have your lay line. But as we know, sailing is an ever-evolving sport. Oh my God, we just got a huge shift and all of a sudden my lay line went from here to here, right? Okay, I am no longer in an advantageous position to get to the pin here, right? And then your team is over here and over here with their people, maybe not so close together, but if you're this boat, this is a really good opportunity if you notice it before they notice it to make a switch with boat 2, right? Boat 2 is coming in, they have their pair kind of behind them or maybe on their hip or maybe here, but this boat can bail, whether it's a jibe or if you want to try and go up and tack. If you're in this position, I would suggest a jibe. My suggestion, jibe out, and then you have this boat coming down to pin boat 3, right? And now you have a switch going, and maybe boat 2 can push boat 3 past lay line, and boat 1 can come back and reset in this middle space, and now you have everyone on a pair, right? That happens in sailing. You get huge shifts, your lay lines change, current changes, conditions change. So communication is such an important aspect of fleet racing, but it's even stronger in team racing because it's not just you and your crew, it's you, your crew, and 2 and 4 other people on the water that you need to be communicating with consistently about what's going on the water. Some really good teams end up practicing this so much, they don't need to be as communicative, right? They kind of know, they can look across the water and be like, oh, yeah, no, kid's gonna get out of that, no problem. And if he doesn't, he's gonna say the buzzword and all of a sudden everyone's gonna be on high alert, okay, we need to slow this race down. So use words that are very separate from each other. I like to teach our teams rabbit and dog for slow and fast. I think those are 2 vastly different words that you're not gonna mess up on the water. Someone says rabbit, you're not gonna be like, oh, did they just say dog? It's just not gonna happen, right? So I encourage people to come up with new terms. Different teams have different terms for the way that they talk to each other in Big Breeze, but it's really important that you guys have buzzwords that everybody understands and recognizes. That way you guys can act quickly. The team that doesn't proactively make moves in team racing is gonna be the team that loses a lot of races, right? You can't just be waiting for another team to make a move. If you are not in a stable combination, you need to be looking to make a move, right? And what I mean by stable combinations, which maybe I should have started with our different kinds of combinations, but we're not getting too deep into getting around the course yet, but 1, 2, 3, I'd say is pretty stable. 1, 2, 4 is pretty stable, right? And then my favorite, a 2, 3, 4 is very stable, right? Any other position that you're in, I don't like. These are the positions I would like to be in all the time. 1, 2, 5 is actually fairly stable, but it could cause disaster if the 1, 2 gets unbalanced, right? 5's job in that situation would just be make sure that the 6 doesn't pass him, right? But these are my stable combinations. This is what I'm looking to convert everything to. And honestly, this often turns into that, okay? Often, very often, because the 1 has to do something before the race ends. 1 versus 3 doesn't usually work. And one of the 2 or the 3 is probably going to get the 1, and then it generally turns into a 1, 2, 3 or a 1, 2, 4 of some kind, right? So 2, 3, 4, what I consider the strongest play in team racing. You can do whatever you want with it, and it's not very great for the other team. They don't know really what to do unless they know how to unbalance, which we'll get to, I think, in part 4. All right, let's move on to some more communication. We kind of went over switch. So I quickly kind of went over lost the ace, right? So we just went over some combinations. The combination that I talk about when we're saying the ace, that combination is, let's say you want to be having a 5 or higher. If your team is in the 6, you've lost the ace. It's really hard to win a race with a 6. 1, 2, 6 wins, 1, 3, 6 wins, and that's about it. All right, 1, 2, 6, 1, 3, 6. That's it. So if you lose this, so if you're the 5 and you lose the 6, you say, I lost the ace. We're not in a great position right now to win this race. You can win a race with a 2, 3, 4, a 2, 3, 5. I've seen a race won with. Okay, you can win with those combinations, but a 2, 3, 6 doesn't work. 1, 4, 5 does. So most combinations, if you have a 6 on your line, you are in trouble, and your team needs to know you're in trouble. So if you're the 5 and the 6 somehow is able to outboat handle you, or you put yourself in a really disadvantaged position and you foul and you're spinning and now you're losing, scream as loud as possible so your teammates understand that they need to at some point do something on the race course to bring you out of that 6 spot. All right. And then you as the 6, now that you've lost the ace, your job is to stay with the play. What I see all too often is this little scenario. We're sticking with the starts, obviously, where this guy gets pushed past lay line, right? Oh, no. All right, so I'm going to be late to the start. And then he's just quiet. And these guys are too busy dealing with their pairs. And so they all start. And all of a sudden, they're halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way up the beat. And this guy out here banging the corner, right? Is there anything you can do with a boat that they're just out there banging the corner? No, you can't do anything. This boat needs to stay with the play and let their team know immediately that they've lost the ace. The amount of times I hear that on the water is with good teams all the time. Missed it, fouled somebody, spinning up the start. I lost the ace, chasing, right? Because you are now chasing the play all the way up the race course. And if you put yourself in a position to just stay with everybody, your team is going to have an opportunity to put you back into a position where you can maybe get the 5, maybe you move up to the 4, and even you get passed all the way into the 1, right? There's a lot of things that can happen at the top of the race course in team racing. But communicating that is super, super important, because if they sail all the way up the beat and they get to mark 2 and all of a sudden they see you coming in, screaming in from course right or screaming in from course left, and they're already rounding, their next time to condense a race isn't until essentially marks 3 and 4, right? So really important to continue on that line of communication. Team race slang, we kind of just talked about what is the ace. Caveman talk, like I said, short races, can't race up, can't put full sentences in there. I hear too many full sentences in team racing. I'm gonna hit on that all the time. It's just too many people are trying to have a full-on conversation about what's going on the race course. You just can't do it. It's not, you're too zoned in on boat speed, boat handling, and what play you're in to also try and tell everybody on your team what to do, okay? You need to be able to understand that. And if you don't understand that, you need to get with your team and figure out what buzzwords you're going to use and what kind of caveman talk you're going to do. You see it in lots of different sports. You see it in the NFL and football. All of their audibles are, very one-word sentences. Beyonce, Omaha, whatever. Like they're simple, short, to the point. Everybody knows what's happening, right? Louie, Ricky. Like those kind of audibles are what you want to be using on a team race course, because there's something short, sweet, to the point. Everyone knows what's happening. Use those. Like listen to some football talk, listen to some lacrosse talk. Honestly, there's some really good video on YouTube that is college racing with GoPros in them, and you can watch those videos and hear their discussions on the water. It's short, succinct, and to the point. They might not give as much of the audio because some teams are very protective over their plays and their calls, but but everyone's got the same playbook for the most part. There may be some slight differences, but everyone uses play 1, play 2, and play 4. There is no play 3. There is no play 5. There's 1, 2, and 4. All right, and then code red is what I like to call when you are when you're fouled and you just don't really have a choice but to just try and run away with a 1-2. Like, okay, this person's gonna get a black flag. They may have a hearing at the end of the day. I need to make sure that my team tries to get into a 1-2, because if we're not in a 1-2, we are not winning this race if our teammate gets thrown out, because they get the 6 plus some extra points if you get black flagged and found liable for that penalty, right? So the last thing I want to hit on in the team race slang, fleet race first. It is so astounding to me how many teams over team race in team racing. Sometimes your boat speed and your boat handling is just better, okay? And you need to own that, right? There's some teams, I've seen it at the highest level of team racing, I've seen it at the lowest level of team racing. You have the ranked #1 team going against the bottom team that has only lost races all day. That bottom team's a lot more motivated than you think they are, first of all. And second of all, if you know you're just faster than a team, why would you team race them? Just get off the line, like I said, at worst start even. And if you know you're faster and your boat handling is better, you don't need to touch them with much team racing at all. You can just sail away, sail around the course, call it a day. I see way too many teams that are trying to be, oh, I'm going to do a pass back here. I'm going to hit this guy even though my team's in a 1-2. Okay, you hit that guy, your teammate hits the mark, you're spinning, he's spinning. Now you're in a 1-5-6 against a team that's going to fight like heck to get to the 1-2, right? Because they haven't won a race all day. Those teams are teams that you want to take seriously, consistently. And if you can just avoid team racing at all, do it. Like, make your life easy. Don't stress your teammates out. Don't try and do something crazy because it's team racing. That's not the point. If you're not, like, what I tell a lot of our teams is get off the line, fleet race for the first 75% of this beat. Just go fast. Do what you would do in a fleet race. Tack on the headers, stay on the lefts, right? Make sure you understand which side of the course is favored, right? If the majority of your team is on the favored side of the course, obviously you want a little bit of control, but if the majority of your team is on the favored side of the course and you're fleet racing up to the top, you may find yourself in a 1-2-3 runaway around mark 1, and all you got to do is just finish out the digital end, right? So don't overdo it. Don't overthink it. Sometimes you're stuck team racing from the start, and those are really fun to watch. But always think fleet race first when you're in the boat with your teammates. It's super, super important. If you're just overly focused on the team racing aspect of it, you're going to sail slow. That's just what happens. You're going to be slow because your skipper is, we coin it the owling, which is when your skipper is in the boat doing a lot of this, looking around, doing a lot of checking everyone out. And if you guys have ever been driving, or if you are a skipper and you've done this before, you know you're all over the place on the tiller when your head is rocking around the boat, right? So keep your head on the telltales, focus, let your crew talk to you, let your crew tell you what's going on. They'll give you all the information you need. If they're not giving you all the information you need, ask them for it. How's our other pair doing? How many pairs are we winning, right? It's really important to know how many pairs you're winning. If I ask my crew how many pairs we're winning and they say us and Tommy are winning our pairs, we're winning the race. If you're winning 2 pairs, you're winning the team race. Okay, that's just how it works. Because you're going to end up in one of those, maybe not a perfectly stable position once you get to mark 1 and mark 2, but at least a winning combo going into mark 1 and 2 with support, right? And then you know who needs help on the race course and how you can help them and strategize on how you're going to help them into mark 1, which is where the first mark traps come into play. We're not going to talk about mark traps. That is kind of the end of my slideshow, but I know I've probably kind of glanced over some things that you guys want to learn about starts. So first I'm going to open to our local people that are here for questions. And then, yes, I can also try and expand. I'm going to kind of stop sharing PowerPoint for a second for those that are on YouTube. But yeah, I'm happy to kind of go over any sort of scenarios that you guys may have missed to make the whiteboard, because the whiteboard was tiny. I know this is our first time doing this, but I can go over some more examples for you guys on pre-start stuff, or if you guys have any general questions about starting in team racing, I'm happy to answer them. So fire away. You guys have any here? Starts. Look, I'm even fine doing situations and starts, but I'm not doing anything above the start line.
Do you have more like words?
More like buzzwords?
Yeah.
They are in our playbook.
Oh, they are?
Yes. Yes, they are in our playbook. But
What is dog and rabbit?
dog is slow and rabbit is fast. Like sail fast, sail slow.
Okay.
Yeah, so like if I'm boat 3 or if I'm boat 2 and my guy is getting absolutely crushed over here in boat 1, he's probably going to scream dog at me, and I'm going to put myself in a position to rag on this person and just make them as slow as possible, or just pin them, right? Because if you pin somebody, which just means making sure they can't tack, they're not going to be able to tack until you go, right? So that's a form of slowing a boat down, because they're going to realize that you're just trying to pin them. So they're going to do a lot of things to try and get out of that pin, right? One of those things being maybe a dip, and then they try to go for a tack, or maybe they'll just head you up and then hope that when they bear away, they can get that out on you and maybe pinch you off. But yeah, dog is slow. So if I hear dog, I'm immediately going to probably rag my jib on somebody. And those zones change, which I can quickly go through the zones. So you have your different covered zones. So generally your covered zones are here to here. That's in like medium breeze, right? And then as the wind gets stronger, that covered zone shifts back. So you need to get further forward on somebody. So that covered zone goes from there to maybe here on your covered zone. So what I see a lot of people do on dog in heavy wind is they're here, they luff their jib, and this boat just does this and walks away from them. So not ideal. Understanding your coverage zones before you rag your jib is super, super important. I'm a big fan of pinning somebody and just trying to get them to work out of it. But at the same time, that can take you completely out of play, right? If they're really good at it and their teammates are doing a better job of making a pass back happen over here, you're not in a good situation, right? So that's why I say act fast. If you wait for somebody else to make the pass back before you attempt to make a pass back, you are going to lose that, because they're going to make it happen first. Make it happen first and make it happen quick. Make them be like, oh, wait, well, all of a sudden, why are we in a 4-5-6? That happened really quickly, because that happens to the teams that are like, we see an opportunity for us to go 1, 2, 3 right now. If we make this happen, and they go and they execute it as quickly as possible. If you're the boat getting ragged on, your job is just to make it take as long as possible, because you got a 1v1 over here, and then you got a 2v2 over here. A lot of the times this is actually a 2v1, and then you have a 2v1 on the other side of the course, kind of just going at it. And if you can make this pass back happen slower, then they can make it happen faster. Now you have won that pair, and okay, they took longer, so now you're probably in like a 1-2 or a 1-3, which is a really great combination to be in. So act smooth, act fast, and pinning is great more towards the end of the race, in my opinion. Or if you're in a 1-2 and you just want to pin the 6 all the way out to no man's land, you can do that as well. But yeah. Anything else on starts?
Can you go more into like how to execute pushing and leading?
It's hard. It's hard without kind of showing you guys some video, but yes, I will give it my best attempt to how you're going to execute this. So you're going to have this comes down again to a lot of communication. All right. So first of all, lay lines. So if you are the pusher in this scenario, you have this person. The leading is hard. Leading is really, really hard, because the skipper and the cruise roles reverse in a sense. All right. The skipper needs to be looking at this boat, because if they can't react fast enough to the hook, they're in a really bad spot, right? So if you can't react, if you're looking forward and your crew communication isn't that great, you're maybe with a new crew, or maybe they just don't know much about team racing and they're not communicating you what the bow of this boat's doing. So usually the skipper in this boat's the one looking back at the bow, and when they see it dip, you're dipping with them. When you see it come back up, you're just gonna come back up and probably left them, right? Because you don't want them to push you past that line. So it's a cat and mouse game of who's gonna make the move first, and can this guy get that lure to overlap to hook you, right? So you wanna kind of, all right, I'm gonna do some juke moves, right? So a lot of the times you'll see bows just kind of going like this. They just do a wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. So the skipper's kind of just like back and forth on the tiller. And then you kind of wait to see if this person's gonna commit to an up or a down. And the minute you see them commit kind of to an up, that's your opportunity as the pushing boat to hook, to push down and hook. Once you have this, they're either, if they're doing it right, as soon as I get hooked, if I'm leading into the pin, my first reaction is, I'm hooked, I'm tacking. Because if you go into attack, they can go into attack, but they're not going to be with you anymore, right? Because they're here. So if you can swing your bow up, you're avoiding contact, and then tack, and then just reset. They'll either follow you, and sometimes, which is always really great, sometimes they'll just go. And then you can kind of loop back around, and now you become the pusher. Maybe they went too far, and you can get a couple pushes in to get them past lay line. If you're the pusher, or if you're the leader, yeah, you want to make sure that you're constantly looking back at this boat, and your crew is giving you information on how close you're getting to this lay line, and letting you know time. Like as a crew, your time and distance is going to be huge. That's kind of the crew's job. Crew's job should be, okay, I know how long the line is, I know how long it's going to take us to get from the boat to the pin, I know how long it's going to take us to get from where we are on the playground to the pin. But this crew needs to be communicating a lot with the skipper in these scenarios, because the skipper's not really looking forward. They're kind of playing off of the pushing boat, and the pushing boat is basically just staring at the tiller of the leading boat and looking for an opportunity to hook them or bait them for a hook. I've seen a lot of the times where that person thinks they got the dive, and all of a sudden they go down and they just hit the person's rudder. So you are so close behind this person that, like, as soon as you make a maneuver, you need to be able to make that hook. So you're not going to be able to push somebody from a half boat length away. You need to be up on their transom, basically almost touching their rudder to make a hook happen. You can't be tentative. You got to be willing to hit some rudders every once in a while, or hit a transom every once in a while, because this hook won't get executed unless you're right up on that transom. And then as a leader, your goal is just to make this take as long as possible. And then if you can force them to maybe think that they have a hook as you get to lay line, right? So you're coming into lay line, and this person's like, and you're like, oh, okay, we're at lay line. The crew's communicated to me, no further left here. You can just be like, okay, I'm coming up, and they may go for that last second hook. And at that point, I'm okay with that hook, because they're not making the pin, right? So you may be kind of in a position where you're luffing towards the pin, and maybe you don't have the best get off, but guess who's not getting off the line at all? It's this boat, right? So it's a cat and mouse game on who's gonna bite first. And if you do get hooked, my suggestion is to tack. All right, because if you just let them hook you, as soon as the umpire boat sees that hook, the umpire's thinking, because you also kind of got to think like an umpire, the umpire's thinking, okay, when is he going to start avoiding? And if you take too long to avoid, which could be, depending on the wind speed, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, you just like stay here, and this boat's like, oh, they're not doing anything. They're just going to go, boom, give you a little tap, and you're going to get a red flag. You're going to be doing 7:20 before the race even starts, right? On that note, actually, one thing that I did want to mention was, I don't like this green, it doesn't show up very well. If you happen to be in this scenario, this is you. Oops. I should not be out there. My bad. I lost track of time. we were talking about homework and I got past pin lay line. And I see this boat coming at me. If it's between 1 minute and 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I take the foul. Because I've seen far too many kids be out here at 2:30. You have an aggressive team that their coaches taught them, you're just going to pin this boat out. You're not going to let them move until the start starts. And then you're just going to, as soon as you see the team off the line and you're good, you're going to tack out and you're going to get onto the race course. Don't be sitting out here hoping that this boat's going to release you to give you a good start, right? If it's between that 1 and 2:30 mark and you're like, well, I'm just in a bad spot. Taking a foul and just doing your turns is not against the rules, right? You put yourself in a disadvantaged position. It sucks. Okay, whatever. Take your penalty and move on, right? It's 1 spin if you take it by yourself. It's 2 spins if you wait for the umpire to go for it. I always tell my sailors, you guys on YouTube, take penalty. If it's under a minute, it's going to be really, really difficult to take that penalty. And you can do your best. But I barely ever see anyone that ends up in this position get to the line on time. It just doesn't really happen because you're just not in a good spot. You don't have anything unless this person just totally misjudges things and just kind of oversails it when they try and shoot up and they give you a lane to tack. That occasionally can happen, but you don't want to count on them messing up their boat handling. One thing that I was taught in team racing at the college level was assume that you and the other team have the same level of boat speed and boat handling. Just assume. Because, maybe you have better boat handling than someone you sail against a lot. Maybe they're better at boat speed than you. But if you just assume that everything's the same, that's going to make you make better decisions. You're not gonna think, oh, they're just going to overshoot this. Assume they can make that play happen because you need to be able to get out of that situation. You need to be able to get out of that play, right? So assume that they can match you in everything that you do. So you need to also use tactics and strategy to put yourself in advantage positions on team racing. So understanding your coverage zones, understanding not letting someone get out of your coverage zones. Don't let someone just sail away free. Like those are some major team racing rules that you need to understand is don't let anyone sail away free. Like at least have a loose couple on them. But yeah, this pre-start is huge. I see 8 out of 10 races are won off the start. At the college level, maybe it's a little less than that, but at the high school level, I see way too many teams just losing off the start because they're just too afraid to get up on the line with the team. So if you're on the line with the team, you're giving yourself a chance, and you can assume that they may make a mistake, and all of a sudden you can hop in and capitalize on that mistake. So if you take anything from this starting talk, take the fact that you need to at least be even with the other team off the line. I think that's such a big deal, and I think it's underutilized in team racing at the high school and college level is you try to play Superman off the start, and you have 4 more legs to go. Actually, in team racing, you have more than that, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because your reach legs are quite long. Generally, your reach legs are 8 to 10 boat lengths. So you get an extra 2 legs of racing, right? So, there's so much that can happen here. Don't lose it. Don't lose it off the start. That's my big thing off of this. Same with match racing. You can at least be kind of with that person, right? Coming into the start, you can at least be kind of with that person off the line. You're giving yourself a shot of winning that match race. So caveman talk, understanding your lay lines, current, when to lead, when to push, short memories. Team racing is a really brutal sport, unfortunately. Like it's a brutal aspect of our sport because in fleet racing, maybe you have a bad race, and you're like, at least we got top 10 in that race. That's, saved us. You got a single digit, right? In team racing, you either get the win or you get the loss. And those losses, when they start piling up, can really affect your confidence. But there's so many times where if you had just done one thing differently as a team, that loss turns into a win. I saw it happen with a couple high school teams where I saw the first couple of years of their careers, it was like team race would be like 1 win, 20 losses, 2 wins, 18 losses. 3 wins, 17 losses, and then they got to their senior year, and all of a sudden they were going, 21-2, 22-1. Like, it's just, as soon as it clicks, and those numbers invert, right? But don't take every loss as like what you would take a 18th in fleet racing in, right? Or a 20th in fleet racing in. Like, it's one mistake, I missed ley line, I missed a mark trap, I messed up that mark trap and they got through and I got too far away. Team racing can be super brutal that way. So don't let it get you down. There's a lot of things that you need to learn about team racing, a lot of intricacies in team racing that I will continue to hit on throughout this sequence of parts. But it's hugely important to understand you can't be down on your team. It's going to happen. You're going to lose races. You're going to win races. Maybe you're going to win races you shouldn't have won. Maybe you're going to lose races you should have won. And then just like anything else, umpires can make bad calls, just like any other sport. So you just don't talk back to the umpires. Just do your turns and move on. Do 1 turn if you think you fouled it. Do 2 turns when the umpire gives you the red flag. Don't talk back to the umpire because they will spin you again. I promise. I've watched it happen. I've been the umpire making people spin for talking back to me. All right. So Corinthian sport and team racing does get intense, but it is just like any other part of sports where you want to make sure that you are properly going through it. All right. Lastly, this is not part of the talk essentially, but it is next week's talk. So if and learning more about upwinds, Marks 1 and Mark 2, which we get to talk about, mark traps, and all the fun aspects of team racing, that will be next week, same time. And there is a QR code, so if you want to scan that, it'll register. Oh, did we get a cut off? Or did I just turn this off? I wonder if we got cut off. Oh, we didn't. I'm still on here. All right. And I can give you guys here the link for that. Oh, there we go. Came right back. But yeah, we can give you guys a nice part 2, and then part 3 will be the following Tuesday, and then the last part, which will be upwind finishes, will be on the following Tuesday, and then we have trivia the night after part 4. So there's a lot going on at SSA, and I hope you enjoyed starts and learned something about starts today. I'm happy to take any sort of questions afterwards, and if you guys have emails for me, I'm happy to respond to emails. So I'll put my email in the chat for anyone that has any other questions. If you go to sleep and all of a sudden you have questions, there is my email. So happy to talk more. And yeah, thank you, Tyler, for the awesome new boats. We also have Bethesda ones, but Bethesda kind of didn't stand out on the board tonight. So that's why they're not on the board tonight. But yeah, cool new boats from Tyler. And yeah, appreciate you guys for coming out. Much appreciated. Thanks, guys.